Throughout the annals of human affairs, there has only ever been one path to power: force. No human has ever asserted their will over others without it. No one has ever come to power peacefully. No one has ever given up their autonomy without the scales being tipped against their favor. If one lives in a society which is stable and relatively peaceful, it is easy to say that the previous statement can't be true, that it is possible for the rule of law and the scales of justice to prevail, that mankind can amiably agree to work together peacefully for the common good, that to do so seems to be the optimal way in which societies function, survive, and thrive, that any society which does not implodes on itself and descends into chaos. This might be the deduction one makes if they have only experienced the stasis of an established public forum, if they have only ever witnessed a relatively stable economic republic of which one person one vote, the appearance of freedom of speech, and the opportunity for upward mobility are taken as God-given rights, where providence is claimed and proclaimed. Even the opposite scenario is true, one exposed only to an authoritarian society wherein peace and stability has reigned, and where people traverse the streets at night without fear of harm, conduct commercial affairs with confidence, and pursue personal interests with an ease of spirit. This scenario is reported to have been the case most recently in pre-Gulf War Iraq, when Saddam Hussein ruled. He is known to have been a tyrant of a leader, and merciless to opposition and criminal activities. But he maintained peace and relative prosperity, stability even within his realm. Once toppled, Iraq descended into chaos for a time, then succumbed to competing power plays by opposing militias, ultimately to be occupied by foreign militaries who attempted to subdue violence and restore a functional government. Those of us who are students of world events know how that played out over time. And this scenario of peaceful power may seem to be the case for many. The reality for the masses of middle-class citizens who largely live within the law, earn a wage, pay their taxes, follow cultural mores, and mind their business. Ask anyone on the fringes of society, and they will likely tell you a different story. One of abuses of power and of insatiable greed. Societal peace is only an experience for the moderate among us, the middle 95%, not the top 1%, nor the bottom 4%. But this paradigm can and will change over time. It is inevitable. It is the natural course of man and beast. The pendulum swings. Tides change. Seasons come and go. So it is with power and authority, social sentiment and the angst of the downtrodden, the ever-increasing imbalance of wealth and privilege which leads to uprising of the condemned, and the relentless oppression of the ruling class which follows. We have become so comfortable in our convention, so complacent in our pleasures. We do not think of our lifestyle as unsustainable. We assume it will go on forever. That the resources of the earth, of each other, and of ourselves which we squander are endless and will continue to increase with a ballooning population, growing demand for products and services, and the ever-increasing drain on the planet. Perhaps at some level of our consciousness we know this not to be true, but we live as if it were. We behave as if this inevitable fact were no more than an insignificant and irrelevant annoyance, which somehow will be rectified by science, God, or the government. This apparent mode of relatively stable society, economy, and of ever-upward mobility is only possible due to its being propped up by government semantics, fiduciary manipulations, and the rape and plunder of the earth and its resources. These societal braces will collapse under the weight of unsustainability one day, and that generation will see the full swing of power. The transition of this once myopic society into a period of chaos, on its path toward a new paradigm of power brokers, likely of a more authoritarian, dictatorial, fascist, and concentrated nature than the current scenario. How do we know this to be true? Because history repeats itself. What has happened in ages past is bound to happen again, and again, and again. The Mayans, Easter Island, the Indus Valley Civilization, the Anasazi, Cahokia, the Vikings in Greenland, the Khmer Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire, and on and on. And these are just a few among known collapsed civilizations over the past 12,000 years. Who knows how many came before, which will forever remain undocumented. The telltale signs of a coming apocalypse in each civilization were factors such as war, economic collapse, incompetent leadership, environmental degradation, over-farming and unsustainable agricultural practices, overpopulation preceding acute population decline, resource depletion, and sabotage by rival, among others. Sound familiar? If the current stasis of societal dynamics and relationships held, it would be the first time in the entirety of human history. The odds are not good. Humanity travails a pulse, a frequency which peaks and troughs, undulates and oscillates. The rate of this pulse is directly proportional to that of technological advancement. The faster our bit rates, the further our signals reach, the more efficient the transmission of information, and the more daunting and complex our machines, the more expeditiously we race toward the next societal peak, and subsequently its next societal trough. And not just the frequency is affected, but its amplitude. How high the highs and how low the lows. The euphoric heights of convenience and plenitude, and the crushing depths of lack, violence, oppression, and despair. This scenario will revisit us at some point. It must. It is the inescapable turn of events, the necessary effect of revolutionary cause, the penance of our excesses come due. And when this happens, what we thought was an ever-expanding wealth, comfort, convenience, and equanimity will become an unbearable torment of human suffering and deprivation. The irony is that it will be of our own doing, of our own short-sighted behaviors, of our lack of alignment and harmony with nature and natural processes, of our abuses of the planet, each other, and ourselves. This is how it has always been and how it will continue to be, until we mature as a species beyond our own individual and corporate lusts, and actively create a society which maintains a sustainable, modest, communal nature, of shared resources which are replenished as quickly as they are resourced, of mutual respect and nurturing, and of preventative self-care. Until we are intentional in thought, compassionate in word, and mindful in deed, as the ancients of every age have cautioned us to be. You may ask, how does this assertion, that power is only acquired by force, prove out in our current paradigm? What proof do we have that this is true? If we have been a part of the middle 95% of the population regarding income, education, and status over the past few hundred years, we likely struggle to see how this could be so. How do we know this to be true, outside of speculation and exaggerated entertainment media, which likely manipulate the facts for dramatic effect? What serves to suggest that peace cannot precede power? Why must it always and only be force? When one looks at scenarios throughout the history of mankind, from hunter-gatherer to clans, then tribes, then sects, to agro-societies, city-states, and empires, it is not difficult to see what part peace plays in this progression, and at what point it succumbs to force. At what point in the formation of societies can peace be attributed to power? Even at the most minimal and meager of scenarios, autonomous and self-sufficient, this dichotomy is at play. When one lives alone, by themselves, responsible to and for only themselves, peace is possible. But even then, this is not always the case, as internal conflict and remoteness can lead to mental instability, decay, and decline. We are social creatures by means of genetic and evolutionary processes. It is an inextricable part of who we are as a species. If you disagree, it is likely that you've never been truly isolated and alone for an extended amount of time. And according to our social nature, we tend toward clanning, toward family, toward community. The moment one introduces the other into their sphere, accepting others in common, social dynamics present themselves, both cooperative and competing. You may say, historically speaking, from the earliest of human family dynamics, the father was considered the head of the family, and this did not require conflict and force. It was natural and accepted among members of the clan. So peace can ascend to power. The application of force here, then, is in the fact that the father, genetically and biologically disposed to strength and bulk, carried with him the ability to protect the family by force from outside threats. But he himself carried the threat of force within his biology, so that family members were less likely to challenge that authority. This threat of force does not make man the smartest member of the family, but the most feared, or respected, if you prefer that term. Within clans, the ascension of force to power is then evident between competing males. Once the head of the family, the dominant male, is weakened or aged or compromised or killed, the next male in line vies for power, and this is through force or threat of force. This is the natural process and can easily be seen in all variations of primates, as close cousins to man, and by extension, to the remainder of the animal kingdom to degrees lesser and greater. The only exception to this dynamic between males and females in a species occurs when the female is the larger, stronger, more threatening and aggressive. In these scenarios, the female holds power over the male, reinforcing the concept of force to power. Notable examples of matriarchal species are spotted hyenas, African lions, bonobos, topi antelopes, and mole rats, where the female exerts dominance over males by means of size or natural aggression. The only exception to the assertion that peace does not ascend to power is in the matriarchal behaviors among orca whales. In the wild, orcas do not tend toward violence or force except to protect their young. They are not typically aggressive, even when it comes to authority and leadership. Orcas, the most civilized of all mammals, according to how power is acquired and maintained, follow the leadership of the elder female of the group. She leads by wisdom, not by force. Orca do not battle for power or exert forceful dominance in any way over one another. In the wild, that is. Captivity can bring out the worst in orca, and certainly changes their normally peaceful behaviors. But, among primates, and humans specifically, force is still the only path to power. To support this claim, that of force to power, in modern so-called civilization, let's look at societal institutions and how they came to be. This will be presented summarily and in brief. The pivotal institutions in society are family, religion, economics, media, law, community, healthcare, politics, medicine, socialization, education, government, military, and science. Each of these were instituted by force, maintained by force, and its highest office acquired and sustained by force. To explain this properly, we must define force and broaden its implications. Force can be both expressed and implied, practiced or threatened, overt or subtle. Force can take on many shapes and forms, and to lesser and greater degrees. This plays out at every step of the force-to-power process, as described below. The family dynamic we have already discussed. In modern scenarios, where societal structures suppress physical force within the home, and outside threats are to be answered by yet other institutional agencies, the patriarchal nature of generations past has been replaced by economic or other factors, wherein the primary breadwinner, whether that be the father or mother figure, holds the most authority. There are always exceptions to the rule, but these serve as general principles. Beyond the family dynamic, power is acquired according to the following processes. 1. Physical violence. The actual killing, maiming, and torture of others for the purpose of establishing power. This is how all societies emerged, including our own, whether it be conflict with an impending other, or an internal power struggle amongst opposing interests. Go far enough back in history, and you will find it. It's always there. Of the institutions of society, this one is tied directly to military, whatever form that may take. The second step in the process is the threat of violence, the show of force which promises recurrence of violence to maintain power, maintaining and making evident the strength of those in power, as enforced by the established military and maintained by intimidation. Reminders throughout societal institutions that reprisal will be met by the force of power. This is systemized by the establishment of government. After government is established, what follows is the institution of rules, precepts and ordinances which are established and codified, the transgression of which will result in the application of force, the implementation of law. This is a method of suppression, the squelching of countercultural elements. The rule of law is maintained by the blunt end of the legislative stick, the executive branch of the federal government and the police and its parallels, which enforce said laws. The fourth step of the process is the establishment of societal norms, social behaviors which are reinforced, even rewarded, by the ruling class to maintain order and compliance of the population. This is represented in the institutions of religion, community, and socialization. This peer pressure is effective in keeping the vast majority of the population in line. This is based on human nature to not stick out or rock the boat, as they say. Conformity is a powerful tool in the ruling of mankind. The fifth step is provision. A pastoral analogy of the institution of provision is, feed the cows. When those you intend to rule are well fed and comfortable, they tend to be complacent and non-threatening. In society, this is represented by service institutions, such as healthcare and medicine, and social programs like social services, public emergency agencies, and welfare, to name a few. When people's basic needs are met and they feel safe, they tend to be more docile. 6. Education. In order to sustain wealth within the ruling class, the population must be knowledgeable enough to support commerce and industry, without being enlightened to the point of questioning the status quo. The first mandatory forms of public education were a means to prepare youth for military service. 7. Distraction. Diverting the attention of the masses away from serious and meaningful discourse which may threaten the status quo by means of entertainment, disinformation, misinformation, news of allegedly concerning, catastrophic, and/or scandalous events which do not present threats to the status quo. These distractions can be found in, but certainly not limited to, institutions such as the media and politics. The eighth and final step along the process of establishing and maintaining force to power is illusion, promoting the idea of the existence or promise of peace, prosperity, and progress, regardless of the reality of these cultural aspects, serves as a societal sedative to further lull the population into subservient obedience. This is ushered by the institutions of economics and science, among others. While the above list is compartmentalized to highlight its role in the process of force to power, each contributes to the whole, and all are entwined to reinforce the primary objective. And each of these is only made possible based on force. They are only maintained by the threat of force. The moment the force propping up the ruling class and its institutions wanes, so does its power, and transition ensues. So says history. This is not to say that these institutions are inherently evil. nor that the individuals within those agencies do so with the sole purpose of subduing the masses. Far from it. The vast majority of the workforce within any given institution is populated by products of the system, themselves subject to the ruling class and their interests. For example, the person in the boiler room of a sea-going steam vessel, tossing coal into the furnace, is not informed of the ship's direction, purpose, nor the captain's intentions. They are tasked with a job, and they are rewarded or penalized for how they do that job. Whether the purpose of the ship is to transport goods and fare-paying travelers, or to attack and destroy other vessels, is not the worker's concern. Just shoveling coal. Keep your head down and your back strong. Keep singing the tune in your head to pass the time. Be civil to your co-workers and follow the rules. Be on time to your station and able to fix pressing mechanical issues as they present themselves. Let the ruling class, the captain and other officers, determine the purpose and merit of the mission. If you are a part of the middle 95% of the population, this is how you fit into the grand scheme of things. Your role in feeding the machine. This is the history and process, the proven artifacts of force to power.